And we're back. I'm deciding to take it easy all weekend because last weekend I was out at a build party for Trans-Cascadia near Lake Chelan, and we were like swinging picks and breaking up rock and building a new trail. And I did a number on this elbow. So I've been trying to take a few days off the bike, let it rest up. Nice cross-country mission today, which is kind of fun because I threw a Bontrager SE2 rear tire on, 2.6 inch, and it's just a super fast rolling little micro knob tire, so should be an efficient way to scoot around on the Firebird. Went to Chuckanut Trail System today, and I'm gonna ride the Ridge Trail, which is a far less ridden, kind of cool backcountry feeling ridge with this awesome Chuckanut sandstone. And the topic for today was just the collection of my top things I've learned mountain biking in the last 20 plus years. I started mountain biking super young with my parents on fire roads.
Dude, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I've never been anywhere like this.
So pretty. Yeah, dude. Get it. That dude is stoked. Yeah, my parents used to ride on fire roads in the Midwest growing up, and just never really lost the love of biking. Yeah, one of the first like kind of techie things I feel like I learned early on was when I was transitioning from a hardtail, just because of my teenage budget, to full suspension bikes. And whenever I was like trying a new jump or something that was big enough to kind of give me pause, make me nervous, usually slow the rear suspension rebound down so the bike has less ability to buck you. I love to run like very fast rebound most of the time. Yeah, I think that's like a simple concrete thing people can do to just avoid risk. Like, people get bucked so often on mountain bikes, which has a lot more to do with body position and weighting, but having like a shock rebound speed that's too high is going to make those odds far worse if your body positioning isn't dialed as you go off the lip. Second thing would be just be really aware of group dynamics. I think anything social this plays into, but the risks can be so high mountain biking. You know, it's easy to drop in behind a rider that's better than you and get caught up in the moment, or have your ego want to hold on to them, and all of a sudden you're looking for reckless speed that you don't have the ability to control, and it can be quite the head fake. And then of course, like when you're in a group, everybody's hitting something for the first time, but you really feel uneasy about it. Like, you can't picture this thing, this roll, jump, drop, like going well in your mind's eye. Just stick to your gut and try to not regard the human social element of it, which is very hard. So I think just like acknowledging that risk at a time when you're not caught up in the moment gives you the foundation to be like, not for me today. And if you're with a rider or a group that doesn't respect that, I don't come across that very often. I feel like the people I roll with are quite respectful, but it happens. You know, that's just like maybe a sign that you need to be riding with other people or changing your environment a little bit. I think what gets me more is like dropping in front of somebody who's super fast or behind and just like not being true to your speed and comfort level because you're like not wanting to slow them down or not wanting to let them get away. And that can be kind of crazy. Also applies to jumping. You follow somebody who's raised in the skate park off a lip and they're like a slow popper. They go off it slow and you need speed. That can be just a recipe for disaster. So, speaking of that, it's funny I didn't put that on the list, but the sport has really grown so much since I've been in it. And anytime you're interacting with riders of other skill levels, for sure hikers, trail runners, just remember in that moment you're advocating for the entire group. If you're a dick and you're not nice to those people, they're gonna have that feeling about all mountain bikers, and all of a sudden, we're facing more of an uphill battle, trying to get trails approved and that kind of thing. So I think it's a good thing to have that mindset of like advocacy at all times. Your interactions are, representing the whole mountain bike community. Got the spring bloom right now and it is just so effervescent green. It's kind of annoying when the trail starts growing in on you and everything's brushy, but it's also so beautiful to see those fresh ferns sprouting and they're just super lime green and healthy looking. Another thing I've been doing lately is if you're ever feeling burnt out or if the weather is nasty, is like wet, shitty, consider going out with just like the sole purpose of brushing and draining and patching up corners. Like head out with a little tool. I'm gonna make a whole upload on this soon, but when I was coming back from my injury, there's only so much I could do. I could just kind of pedal my bike, but I couldn't ride at any speed safely. So I went up with a saw and a little dirt tool, and it is so rewarding digging out drains and trying to think strategically about how you can kind of do the least amount of work but get the most sustainable drain going. It's just like such a mental reset for me, and also improves the trails for everyone. So I know I just have those days where you're not extremely motivated to ride, and weather usually plays into that heavily. Like on wet days, I'm not trying to like go screaming through the woods and like just get super wet. I'm looking to go slow and keep the bum kind of dry and trail work. Yeah, so I'm gonna make a whole upload on that because I've just been so stoked about it lately. Okay, the next little techie thing I've learned is while climbing, if you're like struggling to get through a tough climb, you can skip up a gear, go to 1 or 2 gears harder, and just lowering your RPM of your cranks can often make it easier to get through tough techie climbs. And then I guess along with that, your saddle has that, it's nice, steep climb right here, breathing hard. But your saddle has that tip, and you can get out on that tip to put pressure on the front wheel so you can still maintain your ability to turn and stay in control. Another thing is like if you're heading out on a ride with somebody who's like questioning their ability to do something on that ride, like a beginner or someone who's lacking confidence, I think it's more important to like oversell how hard the ride's gonna be and the danger, just because we often forget how gnarly these trails are when you ride them all the time. It's just so easy to like undersell, the fitness required or the skill required. And then that person is like, upset with you. I find like if you can get them on board overselling how hard the ride's gonna be, it's just gonna be easier for everyone. They're probably still gonna come, but at least they'll be ready for that, the mindset they need. And I find that's true basically in all of life. The next thing I want to bring up is a very important one that keeps you in the longevity of biking game, and that's to honor repetition and skill over the kind of huck and pray mindset. Mountain biking has just kind of always been one of those sports where you can get lucky quite a few times just hucking your meat off of a drop or off a jump. Like you can often be successful without the absolute skill required to make those things work. But it will eventually catch up to you. And if you don't have the skill and balance to fall back on, you're gonna find yourself in the emergency room, which can be like a huge wake-up call for people. And even really good riders get hurt, but there's pretty risk-on attitudes I see out of people with very loose form that just really scare the crap out of me. So I think you need probably like a year or more like riding, starting from a more chill intermediate level before you should feel comfortable like sending big features. Just try to maximize time on the bike and really be strategic about starting small with features and doing smaller features, jumps, rolls, drops for a good amount of time. Get used to flicking your front end and learning brake control. And I think it's just this sport that's inherently, you feel fairly invincible. Some people can early on just because the tech is so good. But if you don't have that skill to lean back on. So one of my I don't know if this works for other people, but for me, I kind of know after so many years of riding whether I can picture a feature going well in my mind's eye, in my gut. And I call that just like kind of a green light. Like I can really picture this going well, so therefore I have the confidence to try it, which isn't 100%, but if you go into something with doubt, it's just really tough to fake self-confidence when you're trying to send it off something and you might grab too much brake and compromise it, or not be able to control the bike in the air or control the amount of speed. So your gut, I'd say after a year or two of riding, is fairly in tune, assuming you're riding quite a bit. So just trust that feeling, and if you don't feel prepared, chances are you're not. All right, made it to the top of the mountain. Still got to take it easy on the old elbow today, but we'll do our best to have fun. Well, hopefully not making my elbow more aggravated. So the next thing I wanted to get into is like kind of define your own, nice and weird through here today. Define your own like riding goals before you find yourself in a group dynamic. So like for me, for example, like mountain biking for me is a way to get into the outdoors, to get great fitness, kind of for a mental reset and fitness purposes, and as something that I can like grow to slowly like get better at, kind of cornering and finding efficient lines and scooting through the woods in a fun and rewarding way. So an example of like where my goal would come in handy is like you see a new edit where some cool guy is hitting every feature in town and you're like, man, I bet I could do that. And all of a sudden you start to get distracted about what your goals were. Because like one of my goals also is to not, get hurt and be on the injured reserve list. So I'm willing to hit new features and try new things like when I get the green light. But if I get pulled into that mindset of like, oh, I'd really like to prove how badass I am and hit all the features and go the fastest, that could be your goal. Not saying it can't be. I'm just saying make sure you kind of define your goals so you don't just get distracted by shiny things. Ooh. Oh wow, got through there today. That's a super weird feature to exit on. It had a nice line in the past. I'm pretty sure that line is gone now, but I think it was just dry enough to squeeze through there. Seems like my micro knobby Bontrager tire is definitely holding its own. It's crazy how good the micro knob, what tires, especially when they're a bit wider, can kind of hold up. So pleasantly surprised because it's still a hair greasy out here. More off topic as I get into the downhill section. So much easier to think, as you can imagine, when I'm just riding or climbing. Ooh, probably greasy. It's kind of a fun high line through there. Okay, next topic is something I think is just like I've personally found it such a great model to kind of picture as you're riding. Oh, the elbow's feeling all right. Hopefully I don't regret this tomorrow. I think I'm gonna take the right line and squeeze through some trees. So the next topic is think of your brakes as a speed, so tight through here. Speed versus traction kind of control. So I think we all could understand. Oh my gosh. I kind of regret taking this line, but I don't need to climb out as much if I go right through here. So think of your brakes as like a speed versus control mechanism. And by control, I basically mean traction. So we all know your brakes slow you down, quite intuitive, but when do you let go of the brakes? Like sometimes, actually often, when I'm most scared on my bike is when I have to just totally let go of the brakes, because that's when you can kind of get as much available traction to you as possible. I think we all kind of know this, but I've just really enjoyed my kind of intuitive mindset that your brakes function as traction maximizers when you roll them off. Oh, there's a fun line up into the side there, but I don't think I'm feeling that spicy today. So this often occurs like some slippery off-camber corner. I mean, right there, I just let go of them. You start to skid out. And what do? You just gotta take off the brakes to maintain traction. And that's when you start steering. And steering and letting go of the brakes to get full traction is really all you can do during those moments. That's a fun little back and forth corner there, little automatic Scandi flick corner. Yeah, okay. Elbow's feeling okay. Open it up a little bit, getting a little bumpy. Wow, even the micro knobby tire is providing a bit of grip. So yeah, nice and rooty through here. You gotta maintain traction, especially when you turn the bike over. And that's when you just have to kind of like get into that full faith moment, get off the brakes. And that's just something that really only comes with experience. It's very tough to have that full faith let off the brakes moment when your, sphincter gets tight and you're spooked. A little bit flatter section of trail here. I can think my thoughts through more clearly. Yeah, I mean, where this traction versus braking concept really comes into play is like you're mid-corner, you're on a super rooty, off-camber, corner exit. You're in the middle of a slimy rock roll. I mean, that's a pretty intuitive one. It doesn't take too long to learn that you don't want to be on the brakes too hard, because then you skid out and you lose all control. You want to keep that wheel moving the same rate as the ground, and we don't have ABS on these bikes yet. So pretty often I'm just like going completely off the brakes when I'm most scared, which takes a lot of time behind the bars to really get good at that. And when you have it, it's an insane insurance policy to go to that, no brakes, when you're, a little out of control. Not the most intuitive thing. The beginner rider is gonna wanna just slam on the brakes because they want it all to stop. This ride is in town, but it has like this very backcountry feeling to it, in that it's tough, very physically exerting, and you're kind of away from people most of the time, and in really nice sections of woods. Nice little overlook here. Sometimes you can see Mount Baker. Today you can see the mist. One more little steep punch climb. Avoided scraping the chain ring. That's always a good thing on that feature. So that traction versus brake switch model really dovetails nicely into my next point, which I believe I've learned slowly throughout the years, but it really got exemplified when I got a dirt bike and started riding off-road trails, which really just kind of magnifies your errors, because the bike is just so heavy and the brakes are powerful, and yeah, it just kind of shows you what you've been doing wrong quicker than on the mountain bike. And that is rolling off the front brake as you come into a corner. Ideally you want to do all of your braking before the corner, but unlike car racing, we have the ability as mountain bikers to get really nice control front to rear. So I've found it's, if you're kind of spooked about what you're riding, you can stay on the rear brake without too much consequence. Ideally full traction, you don't want to be on any brakes, but coming into corners, I roll off the front brake, just did it there, and yeah, it's kind of like I roll off the front first and then the rear. See if these rocks are dry today, because this line is kind of cool, but I really don't want to go down today. Oh yeah, it looked dry, but it's, dang it, it's pretty slick. It looks pretty good, but it's not. Shoot. Oh, this line's so cool. You're like on this huge cliff band, and yeah, it would be possible in the wet, but kind of should take it easy today with a stupid elbow, so I'll have to do that in the future. But you can kind of come up high here. It's just like a really rewarding techie move, and I've definitely gone down on it when it's slick. So, and then you get punished if you have to go around it to the left here by like riding this barely rideable line. Oh, actually, maybe we got a different line we can do. So that rock face would be a perfect example of like, you don't want to be on the brakes through there, because you will just get just taken out. even though it'd be really nice, really comforting to be on the brakes. It's a really pretty view and cliff bands right here. That rock's a little drier. Yeah, everything's a little wet still. That rear tire is fighting for grip. It's a pretty juggy section. This was like the one section that I kind of regretted planning this ride for, since this was supposed to be like a cross-country ride, but this section's gonna beat up the elbow a little bit. But it's worth it because most of the time you're just pedaling through beautiful forest. So not gonna go through here with a normal zest. And I'm honestly, it's like I'm not even going fast enough to do my roll off the brake technique. It's usually when you're going a little bit faster and you have a little bit more to lose. Do it right there. Do it right there. Woo. Yeah, so just kind of rolling that front brake off and coming off the rear brake later just allows you to keep steering while still slowing down speed. And there's a lot of corners in the bike world that are like downhill. Oh, such a pretty section through here. Hope this comes through on the camera. Where you're, there's things in the bike world, trails, where you go downhill throughout a corner. So it's like, what do? You need to maintain grip, but you also at times don't want to be accelerating still. And on like one corner, you can really get like accelerating more than you want to. So that's when you're kind of just hanging on the rear brake. If the bike skids out on the rear, it's like way less consequence than when it slides out on the front. I'm sure better riders are able to, you know, brake a lot later and completely get off the brakes more, but it's a journey. And certainly my technique is kind of doing the front to rear brake roll, and just ultimately that's a derivative of thinking of your brakes as traction versus slowing you down, braking. It's a two-way lever. So hopefully I belabored that point nicely. It's a cool techie climb through here. The micro knob is putting up an excellent fight. Come on, yes. That can be a pretty tough section. Whew. This whole trail coming up Hush Hush is like a real techie trail, and it's a little wet today, so should get the full slick program. Another simple one I want to throw in here quick is something I've learned through experience. Is like, we've probably all had those moments where something feels a little off with your bike and you're kind of like, should I stop and look at it, or like, should I keep going? I find that whenever your gut or your ears or anything are like questioning if everything's tight on your bike or if your frame's broken, just like get off your bike and do a thorough inspection, because the amount of times that turns out to be like a legitimate feeling is more than not, and can mess you up. Woo! Okay, micro knob definitely found its match through there. So always check your bike when in doubt. Nice and muddy through there. This whole trail is gonna be nice and slick. And to anyone who's ridden Hush Hush, when it's slick, it's keeps you on your toes. So the next one I wanted to talk about is hip positioning, which I've mentioned this in my cornering video, but it's just a really important thing to reiterate. Oh yeah. Your hips control where your center of gravity is essentially, where it's like a good enough proxy, like where the trunk of your body is laying out is where your weight is. And you always have weight distributed between your front tire and your rear tire on like a percentage basis. So X percentage of your weight is in the front and the rear, and it's kind of an absolute thing leading up to a sum total of all your normal force on the ground to get techie. But that fact makes biking so cool because you can shift your weight front to back to dynamically force traction into the wheel that you are losing it on. So if you're doing a tough climb, you can lean back onto your saddle and force more traction through the wheel that you're trying to get more grip with. And then when you're cornering, you can lean forward just like I just did. Probably hard to tell on camera. And that gives you more normal force through your front wheel, leads to more grip. So you have that in your control at kind of all times. And it's just such a cool part about motorcycles and bicycles is that we have control over that versus like automotive racing where you're just mostly along for the ride and have your brakes and whatever gas to throw the weight around. But on a bicycle, man, your weight is like a fairly massive portion of the total weight on the tires. It's a large percentage, a little bit less with an e-bike or whatever, but that gives you this amazing ability. So play with throwing your weight forward and back, maybe even side to side to gain traction. Like if you're losing front end traction, if your front wheel is pushing through corners and whatnot, that's a sign that you need to get that weight forward, which is usually the issue people have. This section is fairly techie. I think it's gotten easier, but maybe I've just gotten better. I don't know. A lot of throwing my weight around through this trail, pulling the front end up and whatever. So yeah, something that you could just spend a lifetime mastering because you can always get better at it, but it makes biking so fun. Okay, I tried to reposition the camera for this next one. Hopefully I'm catching my feet. If not, apologies. But the next one is to put your outer foot down in a corner. So I just did there, left foot went down for a right-handed corner. So anytime you're struggling to weight yourself properly through a corner and you feel like you're gonna slip out, like a great hack to lower your center of mass on a corner and put it where you wanna put it is to put your outside cornering foot down. Just kind of did it there. And that allows you to stay more stable while you get your center of gravity low. You kind of load up the correct part of your tires. It's like you can kind of force your weight into the lugs of your tire. But that's one of those tips that I feel like can basically overnight make somebody a more confident cornerer, is loading your outside foot with your weight while you're cornering. So if I'm turning right, I put my left foot crank all the way down if I can, assuming I'm not gonna hit it on rocks and stuff. That's part of the dynamic. And then that allows you to like really pitch the bike over, turn your hips into the apex. It just kind of like automatically snaps you into what I find to be like a really good cornering position. And you don't need to do this. Some riders ride just like amazingly well, keeping their feet 50-50. But I mean, worst case, something to play around with. And the minute I started doing it, the minute I just like felt way more confident on big off camber, crappy corners where traction was at a premium. So another way you can do that, maybe more advanced, is like load your suspension up by pushing your feet into the bike at the very moment where you need traction. And in my head, I call that like making the bike listen to you, because you're forcing normal force downward onto the tires, which is half the equation for friction. So another thing to experiment with, like whenever you're running out of traction in a corner, you can push the bike down and generate more grip. You can't do it for too long because the suspension starts to rebound, but ideally you do it right at the least amount of grip, and the bike should listen to you more. Kind of running out of trail here, so just gonna keep it to one more point. Leave in the comments, guys, all the other things that I'm missing and things that have been valuable to you in learning to bike. Be great to share that information. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to leave off on was that's a terrible tree in the way, and I don't have my saw. Yeah, the last one I wanted to touch base in is like something that I've been doing I guess I've probably been doing it forever, but I've just been like, you get better at it, right? And that's looking for doubles in features down the trail to kind of find it's fun because you're jumping, and it's fast because you're creating a smoother line and avoiding just like whacking the bike into things you don't necessarily want to whack it in. So I just kind of doubled those few routes there, and allows you to just like get creative because you're constantly like looking for places to I call it porpoise down the mountain, because like some trails I'm just like hopping up and down and up and down and up and down. I feel like a freaking dolphin. But you want to look for doubles, and that's like you're looking for a natural takeoff and a natural landing, and you'll see like how good riders are at this stuff. Like they will pull for doubles that are like 30-foot gaps, like 15 miles an hour. Like if you're strong, you can just like pull for crazy stuff. I think there's actually 2 cool little doubles I can pull for at the end of this trail. And if you just notice, I rolled off the front brake on that corner. I'm like starting to notice the things that I've been talking about. Yeah, I think there's at least one good double down here, but see these oh shit, no, not today. There's just these natural jumps built into the earth, and by jumping through them, you can smooth out your line, have more fun, honestly beat up your bike less. Like on shorter suspension bikes, I end up doing it more. Okay, heading down another just beautiful old growth trail. None of these trails today have been like incredibly popular bike trails. Definitely the narrow path, but super pretty, and just super pretty reset to just hang out in the woods and try to not beat up my elbow too much while getting out in the fresh air and being where I want to be. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this format, if it was valuable, if I should just cut videos shorter, is this too much for you? Just be interesting to hear. This is basically like a big ass podcast today. Woo! I think I did the outside foot down, rolled off the front brake for that one, so just trying to practice what I preach. But yeah, if you guys have been enjoying this stuff, consider subscribing to the channel. It's been growing nice and organically, which I love. And yeah, just leave in the comments the things you felt like I missed out on. I'm sure there's a ton of things, but these things were the things top of mind when I made the list. So I feel like the older I get, the more it kind of like social things and longevity things, not getting hurt, have made the list.